everybody, it's Roxbox90 here with another how to build your EDH commander video. This one's going to discuss the playstyle of Control. Control, as we said, pretty much tries to manipulate the early game before and slowly hopefully build up enough mana, enough recurring and reusable resources in order to further manipulate the game down the line and control the game as it goes along. So the first playstyle we're going to discuss is the Blink Bounce playstyle, sometimes called 187. I had to actually look up why, but apparently it's because the California Penal Code for murder is 187, and since the idea being abuses when it comes into play, it does something and then you put it back in your hand or remove it from play and allow it to come back into play, so you abuse that ability over and over again. And because the card is getting away with this ridiculous abuse, it's getting away with murder. That's kind of where the 187 comes from. Anyway, so it's kind of like Sack and Recur, which we talked about in the aggro video, in that it's going to use the enter the battlefield techniques, but it won't really use any of the graveyard. That's kind of where it's different. They tend to be blue-white or blue-white-green. So you have cards like Venser, who his +2 allows you to pull things out of the battlefield and bring them back in, so you can reuse abilities, such as one who I use, Glenalendra the Archmage, has Persist. She can counter a non-creature spell, and she has Persist, so if you sacrifice her to counter a non-creature spell, she dies, she comes back to play with Persist, you then use Venser to remove that counter and abuse her ability like crazy. You have things like Crystal Shard, which allow you to bounce things back of your own stuff, for one blue and tapping it. You can also bounce out their stuff, but it's mostly for your own manipulation. You have cards like Turn to Mist, which removes a creature from play and brings it back. Same thing with Otherworldly Journey, and Flicker Wisp is it on a stick that you can reuse, that it removes a creature from play and brings it back. So those are sort of commonly see cards. You also have things like Cloudstone Curio, Erratic Portal, and others. General-wise, there are a few generals that, like Venser, Shaper, or Savant, that actually use this sort of ability in itself, but many times generals are chosen, such as Rafiq, just for the color that it allows you to have. So the biggest problem with Blink is that if someone removes your creature or prevents you from blinking, then you can't really blink at all. But at the same time, it's a very powerful abusive strategy and a lot of fun. The next control strategy we have is the stacks, taxing, prisoning, slowing down. A very disruptive strategy. The idea being you try to tax everyone else and slow everyone else down in a global effort to prevent other people from doing well. So you often don't want to make too harsh a quote-unquote lock on the board, because that makes the game stupid and unfun, but oftentimes there are certain ways you can do it that will hurt people but will not destroy the game. So these are just a few examples I found. War's Toll, that it taps all lands the player controls when they tap one, and it forces creatures to attack every turn. Everlasting, players can't gain life, damage can't be prevented. World Queller, at the beginning of upkeep, everyone has to sacrifice things. Defense Grid, during each person's turn, everyone else's spells cost more. Suffering Vortex prevents life gain. These are just examples of things that have a broader impact. There are other examples like Ghostly Prism, and you have Death Cloud and Smallpox, which are widespread effects that hurt lots of people. Some popular commanders, unfortunately, I don't have any of them, but you have people like Grand Arbiter Augustin, Gadok Teague, Rakdos, Linvala. These are all irritating board locking commanders, and this is a viable strategy. Just you have to be careful not to put too hard a lock on the game, else you risk ruining it for everyone. Another strategy you can run is Land Destruction as a control. This is, in my opinion, to build a deck around Land Destruction is just really not fun. It really ruins the game for everyone. It's not a nice strategy. Oftentimes, though, you can use it as a sub-theme within your deck if you want to have some land control. So obviously running things like Strip Mine, Wasteland, and other lands that destroy lands, Ghost Quarter is a budget version, for example. And Tectonic Edge. Running those sort of lands allow you to destroy other lands, which gives you some pinpoint control. Things that are more like global ruin that makes everyone sacrifice all their lands, but but one of each type, or Sundering Titan. These are ones you see widely used, but they're often very irritating. You don't want to run them too much. And so there's really not much to say about land destruction. You can have other cards like Crucible of Worlds, or if you destroy everybody's lands, you have ways of getting back. But overall, it's not something I'd recommend. Other generals that you can use Numoth the Devastator, Worth the Raid Mother. There are also widespread cards like Armageddon and Catastrophe. And if you set yourself up and then use these wide destruction lands, you can often turn the game completely in your favor. But you really won't win many friends doing this, and it's more of a viable 1 versus 1 competitive strategy, not a fun multiplayer strategy. Another viable strategy is thieving, stealing. This is very fun. Unfortunately, I don't have many of the cards, but the idea is basically you steal other people's graveyard stuff, you steal other people's creatures, you steal other people's spells. So you can use things like bribery here to steal opponents' creatures. You can use things like control magic, mind control, blatant thievery, gathering specimens, threaten, treachery. These are all ways to gain control of other people's things. Its biggest weakness, of course, is that decks that run a lot of self-sacrifice, they don't tend to run necessarily a lot of big creatures because they're working on tribal and other things, so that won't work very well. And other control decks can often just counterspell and prevent you from doing this. But popular commanders you can use Thadadel, Memnarch, Sakashima. These are just examples of the thieving sort of decks that you can run. I don't really have any examples for this one, but you can also use Enchantress, which is usually controlish and self-defensive. So you have cards like Mesa Enchantress, Argothian Enchantress, Serra Sanctum, Aura Thief, Karmic Justice, Enchanted Evening, cards that either make lots of your stuff into lots of enchantments. It's kind of like tribal with enchantments, which is kind of strange. But you can use commanders like Treva the Renewer or Earl the Miststalker, who's very popular for auras, particularly, or enchant creatures. Hannah Ship's Navigator. White and green are the big colors. Biggest problem, of course, is decks that run wider enchantment destruction, because if you destroy all enchantments and your stuff's all enchantments, you're in trouble. But it's kind of like a weird control tribal, even though it's not a creature type, it's a card type. But that's another one you can run. And the last one is Punisher, which is a kind of a version of the imprisoning, taxing, hurting everybody strategy, but it doesn't really try to deny and tax resources and lands and creatures. It kind of tries to punish everyone for doing things. So if everyone's drawing cards or tapping lands or playing spells, you want them to take damage and to suffer for it. So cards like Mana Barbs, Anka Mishra, Underworld Dreams, Spiteful Visions, these are all examples of cards that do this. And obviously you want your opponents to suffer more than you do, so you work around protection spells for yourself while hurting everybody else. So you can have cards like Life Gain, like Urza's Armor, which gains you a life regularly, or Sun Droplet, I think it's called, in order to prevent some of the pain you're taking and hurt it, and no one else will have that option. So commanders you can use Karak the Merciless, Zuzu the Punisher, Zozu the Punisher, Kalia, Heartless Hitotsugu, which I'll put up a deck tech of him, and it kind of works like a Punisher group slug. So that's kind of an overview of control. I'm sorry some of them I didn't have examples, or I'm kind of rushed a little bit because I don't play a whole lot of control. But it's a fun strategy, and as with aggro, many of the sub-themes overlap, and you can even overlap into the other two big themes. You can have aggro control and control combo and combinations. So anyway, I hope this video was informative. Please feel free to subscribe up here for more MTG content. The playlist of videos will be here. Next video will be coming up soon, which will be combo. Over here will be previous video, which discusses aggro sub-theme. So thanks for watching. Please feel free to comment below, PM me with questions, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.